Good morning, and thanks for being here. Appreciate you all joining us as we announce two initiatives in collaboration with the Municipal Court and the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office that will help us to reduce crime and violence in our city. Every day we're seeing firsthand its devastating impact in news headlines and our public safety forces serving on the front lines and in homes across Columbus, where families mourn loved ones whose lives were cut tragically short. It was just a couple days ago that a one-year-old baby girl was shot and killed during a family dispute near Polaris. And the city of Columbus experienced a loss in our own family just this week when Tyack Cradle was shot and killed in her home on Sunday morning. These losses and all the others our community has endured are more than a statistic. They are people who deserve more and better from all of us. We cannot and we will not accept this cycle of violence as our new normal. We must address these issues from every angle, holding those who commit crimes accountable and put behaviors on the right path for folks that we can intervene earlier with. We know we can hold folks accountable that have committed crimes while pursuing innovative and proven strategies to end the violence. This includes intervening early to change the behavior and set individuals on a brighter path before they begin a downward spiral that cannot be reversed, where children, families, and our neighbors suffer the consequences. This work will not be easy, and there's no single solution to the challenges before us, but we can and we will reduce crime and violence by stepping up, banding together, and taking action on a variety of fronts. And that's why we're here today to announce $400,000 in new support for two programs led by our partners at Franklin County Municipal Court and the County Prosecutor's Office. These programs represent the latest in a series of steps that we're taking to build a safer Columbus, this time by strengthening our collective resources and helping individuals turn away from crime. It's now my pleasure to introduce our Chief of Police, Chief Elaine Bryant. Chief.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor Ginther. The level of violence we are experiencing around the country and here in Columbus is not acceptable. We, as a community, we must do better. We must do more. Too many families are grieving. Too many mothers are burying their children. Our relationship with ATF and our local agencies is proving invaluable in our continued fight to reduce the violence plaguing our city. To the families shattered by this violence, you have my deepest sympathy and my commitment that we will do everything in our power to end this devastating cycle of violence. We're putting everything we have into this fight, but as I've said before, we cannot do it alone. That is why the partnerships and funding being announced today are so important. These grants go to the heart of what's plaguing our community, the intersection of young people and gun violence. And I believe that will make a difference in our fight for a safer city. To share more about this program underway, in her courtroom, please welcome Franklin County Municipal Court Judge Jessica DeVarga.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here. I would like to thank Mayor Ginther for his support of this important transformative justice initiative on behalf of our emerging adult population. This program is going to provide incredibly important services for the youth in our community, including behavioral health services that are trauma-informed, housing, transportation, education and workforce development, driver's licensing assistance, parenting guidance, and any other thing that a young adult might need to stabilize themselves. Investment in our youth is truly an investment in the future of this city. I am so committed to the success of this program. I am committed to continuing to support the youth in our community so that they can truly unleash their endless potential. And I'm also committed to continuing our partnership with Mayor Ginther and City Council so that we can continue to improve our criminal justice system. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce First Assistant Prosecuting Attorney, Special Units, David Ingram. David?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to Mayor Ginther and City Council for approving our initiative and our request for financial support to increase to combat the increase in gun violence in the county. We value this new partnership and your investment in our office. We also look forward to our future partnership with the Franklin County Board of Commissioners and receiving their support on our initiatives to further combat the surge in overdose deaths, surging homicides, gang violence, and the most serious offenses involving special victims. Today, our office, the Office of the Mayor, City Council, the Columbus Police Department, as well as the City Attorney's Office, the Franklin County Sheriff's Office, while all not present, are all aligned on a single issue. We have to end gun violence in the community. We are on pace for a record-breaking year for gun violence and criminal offenses that are related to gun violence. It seems day-to-day life has been impacted by this violence, whether it's inside malls, at community centers, gas stations, parks, walking to your car, or even in the comfort of your own home. Gun violence has found the residents of this county. Our neighbors, friends, family members, and as Mayor Ginther said, within the past 48 hours, a baby has been tragically killed due to gun violence. Weekly in our office, it seems that we are reviewing homicide cases and speaking with the families about their trauma and pain and heartache of the loss of those loved ones. Just this week, I spoke with a family member who lost a loved one by doing something very routine, such as walking to a car. Our gun unit represents 9% of our prosecution staff, yet the gun cases for our office represents 20% of our entire docket. So think about that. 9% of our staff is handling 20% of our cases. Understanding the significance of these figures, within the first 6 months of the transition, Prosecutor Tyack expanded the unit from 5 prosecutors to 6. The support of Mayor Ginther and City Council will allow us to further focus on gun case prosecution and expand our unit from 6 to 8. We have an obligation to do whatever we can to keep the residents of this county safe. This is us doing our part, and believe me, this is just the beginning of what we will do. I will turn over to John Gripshover, who is the director of our gun unit and one of the most experienced prosecutors on our staff. John?
Thank you, David. My name is John Gripshover. I am the director of the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office's gun unit. We have 6 currently prosecutors who are dedicated to the singular proposition of attempting to reduce gun violence here in Franklin County. How do we do this? Well, first let me say, I have 5 currently prosecutors who are working very hard. As I'm sitting here today, they are covering 13 cases that I was supposed to be covering in court today, in addition to their own dockets. They are extremely hardworking, and I appreciate everything that they do for this county. Jack Wong, G.W. Wharton, Lindsay Potter, Seth Enlow, Michael Shaw, extremely hard-working county employees. How do we do our jobs? What is our job and what do we do? Largely speaking, our unit focuses on illegal possession of firearms. So we're talking about our bread and butter is an individual who has a gun in a car, transporting it in an improper fashion. An individual who has a gun concealed on his person in an improper fashion. an individual who is under a disability and is not allowed to possess a firearm, and yet does. That is our bread and butter. We also handle homicides, robberies, shootings, all of the regular cases that come as part and parcel of what we do with our gun cases. We have seen the historic correlation. We know that individuals who have a history of illegally possessing a firearm tend to, on numerous occasions, end up being shooters. They end up being drug dealers. They end up being individuals who we all, generally speaking, would like to eliminate from our community in a fashion that would protect our community. When we analyze one of these cases, we tend to break them up into 3 specific groups. There are individuals who are just trying to follow the law, are law-abiding citizens, but they got it wrong. Gun laws can at times be confusing. We understand this. So if we see an individual who has no prior record, who is contributing to society, who is working, who does not appear to be addicted to drugs, and just didn't understand how to properly transport a firearm, there is a resolution that we are going to try and tailor for that individual that will not negatively impact his or her future. On the other side of the spectrum, we have the individuals that we all know are dangerous individuals. They have violent histories, they have drug trafficking histories, they are individuals that have no business being anywhere around a gun. And when we find one of those individuals, we do everything in our power to protect the community from those individuals. The real sweet spot of what we do, however, and the thing that actually realistically takes the most time, is the individuals who are somewhere in between, the at-risk. The individual who may have no prior record, but has drug addiction, has mental health issues, has something else going on in their life, they're on the verge of becoming a gang member. Those sort of individuals, maybe they do have some amount of a prior record, but no violence, they haven't crossed that line yet. They're still individuals that we should be working with, that we should be trying to prevent from going down that road of becoming that dangerous individual. And that's where we spend a significant amount of time trying to work and tailor resolutions, whether that's a misdemeanor resolution, whether that's a felony resolution, but to tailor one to try and help them succeed, to try and break that path that they might be heading down to becoming a violent individual. We do that pre-plea, we do that post-plea, through probation, pre-plea, through negotiations that we have. In order to get a specific resolution, can you help us, show us that you are willing to try and abide by what our expectations are? Can you get a job? Can you stop using drugs if you're using drugs? If you don't have a GED, can you get one? All of these things that we would like to encourage them to do, try and set them up on a path to succeed. We can do it post-plea also through probation. We can have our probation department do mental health counseling. We can have them do drug screens and drug treatment if necessary. There are a number of other programs that we have available to us. We also have a partnership for the worst of the worst with our friends at the federal government. Down the street at the U.S. Attorney's Office, I have almost daily conversations with my counterparts there, and we discuss which cases have come in our county that are the worst of the worst, that need federal attention because, candidly, they have a bigger hammer than we do. They can do more to protect the public than we can with our state laws. So we do try to divert the worst of the worst to them. With enough time and enough resources, we can prevent some of these at-risk individuals from going down that path to becoming a violent felon and a person who is a danger in our community. Thank you all.
Thank you, John, David, Chief Bryant. Grateful to Franklin County Prosecutor Gary Tyack and Judge DeVarga, their staff, their leadership, their support in this area. As I've said before, we're committed to exploring every option, mobilizing every resource, and pursuing every possible solution to making a lasting and meaningful difference. The programs discussed today, joint efforts we have already announced and continue to support, and will soon be joined by additional measures as those are identified and brought online. That's one of the things that Chief Bryant and I are solely focused on. But all of us need to do more, right here and right now, to bring down the level of violence in our streets. I'm calling on all of our neighbors across the community to do their part, to keep their friends and loved ones safe, to report what they know to the proper authorities, to prevent the next potential tragedy from occurring. The road ahead will be challenging, and we will have setbacks, but I'm confident we will emerge as a safer, stronger, and more resilient Columbus. Today's announcement is another reflection of the comprehensive approach that we're taking. Judge DeVarga's leadership and vision, an intervention effort to help get young people who may be on the wrong path back on the right path, and additional prosecutors to help with prosecution and enforcement around gun crimes. We believe that this comprehensive approach, in addition to others that we have started and expanded, and ones that Chief Bryant and I will be announcing in the coming weeks, will continue to do our part. And we will not rest. We will not yield until Columbus is the safest big city in America. I'll be happy to take questions.
Mayor, you had mentioned that the gun unit is going from 6 to 8 prosecutors. The 2 additional prosecutors, where are they exactly coming from? What unit? And does that leave then that unit understaffed if they're moving to the gun unit?
I'll look to David or John to answer that.
Thank you, ma'am, for your question. What will happen is we'll slide 2 additional prosecutors from the actual trial staff up, and it'll shift from the trial staff, from the grand jury unit, 2 additional prosecutors up. So it's kind of a shift in the office. We have a process where you go through grand jury, juvenile, general trial staff. So it's a shift that we have prosecutors in place waiting for openings to go into these specialized units. So it's just going to be a shift in the office. Not necessarily understaffed. We will need additional prosecutors to carry out our duties, and that's what we are seeking from the county commissioners. But in the grand jury unit, they're not necessarily handling our trial staff cases or our gun cases. But again, we have a pipeline of attorneys within our office. But collectively, can we grow our staff? Can we expand? Yes, and that's what we're looking to do.
Yes, sir.
Yesterday, a community leader from the Somali community called me to say that he needed help because there is gun violence within that community. So I told him that he called at the right time, that I have an assignment today. So I want to know, not just the Somali community, but to the New Americans community, what message do you have for them concerning, especially within the youths?
Well, the safety and security of all of our neighbors, regardless of where they were born, they're our neighbors now, and it is our job to make sure that they're safe in their homes, where they worship, where they work, where their children go to school. And so specifically to that community, be happy to follow up, Chief Bryant and I, to reach out to learn more about issues maybe going on within the Somali community as we continue to work with other folks across the city on gun violence as a whole. But we're committed to protecting everyone in this community. Yes?
The $400,000 that's going towards these programs, how much percentage-wise will that increase the budget for these programs that already existed?
Well, most of the funding for these 2 programs have come primarily from the county. Is that correct? And this would be additional city resources to expand those. I don't know, Judge or David, do you want to speak to other resources for the programming? And maybe, I guess what you're getting at is what these resources will help them do.
Yeah, like how far is that $400,000 going to go? If you could put that into perspective for us.
Sure. So The mayor's offer of $200,000 for our programming is going to provide us a probation officer, a caseworker, and additional resources that we need to start the pilot program. City Council and Councilwoman Favor has agreed to fund the job and education workforce development portion of the program, which is going to be provided through AMP, which is a county agency. So it truly is a community effort, a partnership effort to get this program up and running.
David, do you want to speak to the gun unit, or John? Your question was about both, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So specifically with respect to the gun unit, we currently have 6 prosecutors working on gun cases. This will allow us to have 8. The funding that comes from this grant will allow us to fund 2 additional full-time prosecutors to assist in us. As David indicated, I don't believe there's going to be any shortage of prosecutors with respect to other units. Eventually that will all flow through. Whoever gets brought into my unit will ultimately be replaced in their particular areas of need from wherever they come from. In terms of the funding, this is an opportunity for us to fund 2 additional positions. We are hopeful, as David indicated earlier, that the county commissioners are going to grant some additional funding for additional positions. In terms of I think originally you asked what percentage of it was. If I was doing straight math, roughly speaking, we've got 6 now, it's 8, so it's going to be about 25% of the budget, give or take, as currently constructed for our unit. Thank you.
Mayor, you talked about the intervention and the additional staff. What about a stiffer penalty? Does that play into this initiative at all? An early release of some suspects that then go right back and commit a crime?
That's certainly something that we can consider. I think what we're trying to take is a comprehensive, balanced approach, as the judge laid out, and the prosecutors as well. There are really many different types, of violent crimes that we're seeing out in our community. And I think, and maybe I'll allow the chief to talk a little bit about this, we're really trying to focus on a very small number of folks in this community that are committing the overwhelming majority of violent crimes, really targeting those folks from an enforcement perspective. But there are others that are headed down the wrong path, or maybe have had some experience with nonviolent offenses, but potentially were handling a gun. And that's where the prosecutor's office and this new effort, the Unleash pilot project that Judge DeVarga is going to be working on, will help to focus as well. But Chief, do you want to speak specifically to the targeting on those violent criminals and working with the courts to get them off the streets?
Sure. Just as the mayor indicated, there is a small group of people. You got 900,000 plus residents in the city of Columbus. There's a small group of people that are driving our violence. There are a group of people, just as they indicated, that this program would affect, that could be significant in turning their life around and stopping them from becoming the really bad actors. So there are a group of people that through these different programs we can decrease recidivism in regards to some crimes that aren't considered violent Part 1 crimes, so we're focusing on them as well. But to your question and to your point, there are a certain group of people that absolutely we have to looking at stiffer penalties, and some people that have to be held accountable for their crimes. But for this specific group of people in that age group, in that range, if it's an opportunity to be able to turn it around and be able to get them some services that put them on the right path and make them productive citizens, that's what we want to do as well.
Yes.
So you guys have talked about there are certain groups of people who are crimes and whatnot. How is the city defining, the city and the police department defining and just identifying those groups of people as well?
Well, I'll let the chief speak to that. I think one of the other connections between these interventions and efforts with the prosecutors and what the chief just said, what's really important as we focus on this small group, that we're doing everything in our power to keep others from joining that group in the months and years ahead, so that law enforcement can specifically focus, and the prosecutors assigned to them, on this group of individuals that are overwhelmingly committing a disproportionate amount of the violent crimes. But I'll let the chief speak to how we define those most violent criminals.
Sure. Those groups are being defined through very strategic action. So we have a pretty good idea of the group of people that we're looking for. One of our biggest issues, obviously, is the enforcement pieces, which is why we're coming up with different strategies to be able to identify them and be able to take them into custody. One of the biggest things that we want to do when we get them in custody is make sure that we get the conviction rate that we're looking for, making sure that we hold them accountable for these crimes so they're not back out to be able to enact more crimes. So we are looking at groups. We have different things in the Columbus Division of Police that we're doing to be able to strategize and target specifically on those people. We want to make sure that we're giving the biggest impact in specific communities that are experiencing this high rise of crime.
If there are any other questions, I'll have folks stick around and maybe do some one-on-ones if you have additional questions. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Chief.